The Post-Exilic period. What happened after they left Babylon? Zerubabbel tells us what happened when they came eventually to Jerusalem. Can you imagine the excitement? What an experience to realize that we eventually arrived at Jerusalem. You know, when we read the prophecies of Isaiah, this wonderful deliverance will happen one day. And we get so excited. But when it eventually happens, when you get there, have you ever had dreams come true? This is a great experience. It feels too good to be true. It was a theory, but now it's a reality. God is real, it's not a theory. After we have settled, we all assembled as one big family in Jerusalem. Can you imagine that? Oh, we've reached our destination. They prayed for this, they longed for it, and here they are. We chose the 7th month for this important gathering. Why number 7? But let me first tell you why I chose the 7th month for this important event. You see, the 7th month, Tishri, was one of the most sacred months in the entire Jewish religious year. And this comes from God. The first day of that month was the New Year's Day of our civil calendar. Can you see why I chose this day and this month? It began with a blowing of the trumpets and a holy get-together. Can you imagine the sound of the trumpets? Pa, 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 pa. You should have heard the echoes from the Kidron and the Hinnom valleys coming back. Oh, what an experience. The trumpet music entered our ears and brought hope to our hearts. For the first time after a long time, we could celebrate the feasts of God. We were launching on a brand new beginning. It's so nice to have a new beginning. You had a quarrel with somebody, a reconciliation happened, and then you've got a new beginning. This is the kind of excitement that we experienced. We were launching on a brand new experience, new clothes, new this, new that, new friends. And this is what I appreciate from God. God is a God of new beginnings. No matter what happens to you in life, no matter how broken you are, God is a God of new beginnings. He is an uplifting, wonderful God. And if you have messed up, my friend, as we, the Jews, did, and we messed up, I invite you to allow our loving God to give you a new beginning. Do you need a new beginning right now? He has a way of deleting, if you work on a computer, of deleting the folders of our failures and creating a new folder called New Beginnings. So right now you can delete some folders and start out with a new beginning. Listen to the following. These are the Lord's appointed festivals, the sacred assemblies you are to proclaim at their appointed times. God wanted these people to assemble, and He wanted to meet them in this fashion. 10 days after the trumpets announced the new year came the following. So from the 1st to the 10th. Leviticus 23 verse 27. The 10th day of the 7th month is the Day of Atonement, a very important feast. Hold a sacred assembly and deny yourselves. A sacred assembly and deny yourselves. There are times when we have to deny ourselves and present a food offering to the Lord. You know, it's nice to bring a gift. And here the Lord allows us to bring Him a gift, a food offering. He doesn't need it, but we need to give. What emotion does the word atonement brings to your heart? The Day of Atonement. A marvelous word. What next? The Day of Atonement was followed by the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot, from the 15th to the 22nd day of the same month. So this was a month full of feasts. And people looked forward to these meetings. We learned to know one another a little better during these feasts. And with the beautiful music and the trumpet sounds, God came close to us. Some people say, I don't need the church. The church needs you. There are bad ones in the church, and there are good ones in the church. The bad ones develop your character. The good ones just blesses you with happiness. Building of the altar of sacrifice. We had to survey the old temple area to ascertain where the altar of burnt offering used to be located. This was quite a job, but we found it. On that very same sacred spot, a new altar was to be built. And maybe in your life, a new altar must be built again. The altar was the center of Jewish worship, and services could not be carried on without it. Why not? The altar had to be completed by the last day of the 6 months, and we just made it. The next was the first of the new year. Exodus 13:6. For 7 days eat bread made without yeast, and on the 7th day hold a festival to the Lord. Deep spiritual meanings. Leaven, sin. We shed a few tears while doing this restoration. The altar. This was the heart of the message of salvation. Because a sacrificial lamb was a symbol of a loving God that would be prepared to take our punishment upon himself and let us go free. This was the message of the altar. New beginning. Give me your mess, and I'll give you my righteousness. This is the message of the altar. The setting up of the altar of daily burnt offerings greatly cheered the faithful remnant. For many decades they lost out on this. Hardly they entered the preparations necessary for the rebuilding of the temple, gathering courage as these preparations advanced from month to month. As the temple rose up, they became more excited, and more blessed and more happy. It's so wonderful to build. Build people up who've become discouraged. It brings great joy. We had for many years been deprived of the visible tokens of God's presence, and now surrounded as we were by many sad reminders of the apostasy of our fathers, we longed for some abiding token of divine forgiveness and favor. Do you long for divine forgiveness and God's favor? My friend, he wants to give it in a great measure. This is our God. He's got a wonderful profile of love and care and forgiveness. The blessing of God was more important to us at that stage, of course, than restoring our possessions and former rights. There's one thing I do. God is first in my life. And this is what happened when we got there. Wonderfully had he wrought in our behalf. And we felt the assurance of his presence with us. Yet we desired greater blessings still. With joyous anticipation, we looked forward to the time when, with the temple rebuilt, we might behold the shining forth of his glory from within. When you serve God, you just want more and more of this wonderful God. You can never get enough of him. The workmen engaged in the preparation of the building material. Man, can you see them working there? Found among the ruins some of the immense stones brought to the temple site in the days of Solomon. They were so excited when they found this. These were made ready for use, and much new material was provided, and soon the work was advanced to the point where the foundation stone must be laid. You know, first of all, they had to sort out all the stuff and the rocks and this and that and the stones. It was a great job. This was done in the presence of many thousands who had assembled to witness the progress of the work, to give expression to the joy of having a part in it. It's nice to have a part in a success story. While the cornerstone was being set in position, the people, accompanied by the trumpets of the priests and the cymbals of the sons of Asaph, music, 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 with a cornerstone, sang together by courses in praising and giving thanks unto the Lord, because he is good, for his mercy endures forever toward Israel. When that stone was laid, the music was there. This was an omen of better days. The temple will be restored again. The pride of the Jewish nation. Despite our fear for the enemies around us, we built a new altar on its former foundation, and the sacrificed burnt offering on it to the Lord, both in the morning and evening sacrifices. They followed the old program built on the definite places. They relived the good old days. The smell of the morning and evening sacrifices reminds us of the fact that God is well pleased in saving us. I love these institutions. Then, in accordance with what is written in the law, we celebrated the festival of tabernacles with the required number of burnt offerings prescribed for each day. You should have seen the beaming smiles on the faces of my people who brought their offerings. It's a blessing to bring an offering to God when you come to church, to the temple. On the first day of the 7th month, we began to offer burnt offerings to the Lord, though the foundation of the Lord's temple had not yet been laid completely. This was an ongoing process. Then we gave money to the masons and carpenters. You cannot work for nothing. And gave food and drink and olive oil to the people of Sidon and Tyre, so that they would bring cedar logs by sea from Lebanon to Joppa, as authorized by Cyrus, king of Persia. You know, in your imagination, you see these ladies bringing food and stuff for the workers, encouraging them. How do you do? How are you faring today? Now we move forward to the 2nd month of the 2nd year after our arrival at the house of God in Jerusalem, and began to restore the ruined temple of God. What a story. Fortunately, we were used to restoring ruined cities during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar. We did well in this restoration. At Ur of the Chaldees, the Jews did some restoration there at Nippur, Zippar, Uruk. Man, they were masters, masons. And you know, sometimes God takes us to hard times just to be a blessing at a later stage. So if you're going through a hard time right now, the blessings await you. You'll go better in future. We appointed Levites 20 years old and older to supervise the building of the Lord's house. I must tell you what happened next. It is so important, you have to hear it. But can you see the Levites? Hi, brothers. Yeah, there. Do this, do this. When the builders laid the foundation of the temple of the Lord, the priests in their vestments and with trumpets, and the Levites, sons of Asaph, with cymbals, took their places to praise the Lord as prescribed by King David of Israel. So they had music while they were building the temple of God. I think we need more music in our lives while we work for the Lord. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be. There are so many beautiful songs, and the songs of David. We used to sing the songs of David when we built the temple. He's good, his love toward Israel endures forever. Beautiful lyrics. He is good. We need his goodness. His love. We need God's love towards Israel. And we need to have this endure forever, forever, forever. The lyrics says a lot of beautiful things. The beautiful words just became louder and louder. Can you hear it? The crescendo is coming up. Just to think, we have laid the foundation of the temple at last. It was laid. And all the people gave a great shout of praise to the Lord because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. Can you hear that happy sounds? The foundation was laid. But my friend, after the foundation is laid, you've got a few challenges. And we're going to look at this. At last, we continued the beautiful order of service that was practiced during the reign of King David. You should have heard the praise and thanksgiving we sang to the Lord that day. Can you guess the contents of the lyrics? He's good. We need to say this often. He is good. He's a good God. Satan is the bad one. His love toward Israel endures forever. Let's sing the song. The crescendo of the lyrics kept ringing in our ears for a long time afterwards. Just to think that we have laid the foundation of the temple at last. This was such a great dream. And all the people gave a great shout of praise to the Lord because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. He's good, they sang. His love toward Israel endures forever. And the music floated through the valleys. What does this picture tell us? Look at these three old men here with their grey beards. And look at the people at the back there. Young people rejoicing and the old people crying. You know, when you're old, you cry a little more. I've discovered this. I want to bring honor to Daniel, whom I met personally on several occasions in Babylon. Under his leadership, I and my exiles had determined to start again to worship God according to his expressed will. There's a way that we should worship God. He wants to teach us that way. We didn't ever want to fall again into the sins of indifference and idolatry, on account of which our fathers had to suffer so much. We don't want to repeat history. Daniel reminded us of the following words of Moses. But you are to seek the place the Lord your God will choose from among all your tribes to put his name there for his dwelling. Jerusalem was that place. To that place you must go. There bring your burnt offerings and sacrifices, your tithes and special gifts that you have vowed to give, and your free will offerings, and the firstborn of the herds and flocks. This was the instructions. Deuteronomy 12, verse 7. There in the presence of the Lord your God, you and your family shall eat and shall rejoice in everything you have put your hand to, because the Lord your God has blessed you. A relationship with God is so precious. It's the most precious thing on this planet. Although we had recently returned from Babylonia, we were already aware of hostility of our neighbors. There's never a dull moment. Satan is on our case continually, and he uses people to disturb us. I'm reading this again. Although we had recently returned from Babylonia, we were already aware of the hostility of our neighbors, who were not a little displeased that we had now returned to their homeland, so they thought. This hostility was already being revealed in threats. Have you ever been threatened? We assembled in Jerusalem in a state of fear. Though we had permission from Cyrus to raise both our altar and our temple, it was not at all certain that this could be accomplished without encountering serious opposition from the neighboring people. You know, we're never safe. That's why we should pray day and night. Fall on your knees. Watch out for selfishness. Deny yourself continually. They occupied some parts of Judea during the exile and were now asked to return it to us. The rightful owners. Please, we are the rightful owners. Naturally, they looked with suspicion upon us, the Jews, who made it plain that hereafter no other worship than that of God would be tolerated. There was a lot of bad worshipping, and I did some research on this. They didn't need this false religion practices. Cyrus had only recently come into possession of these areas, so we must also remember this, which had belonged to the Babylonian Empire, and he may have exercised only nominal control over them. So we had all these challenges. Festival of the Tabernacles. The festival requirements were carefully observed. For us to live in tents or booths had a real and appropriate meaning at this time. Can you see them? The feast was originally established as a memorial of the 40 years of desert wandering. Once more we had been led back to our homeland from a foreign country where we had been in exile. Once more we were living in tents until more permanent places could be built. You know, sometimes we need to be discomforted. We love our comfort, but there are times that we should have a change. I say change is as good as a holiday. You appreciate the good things of life a little better. Burnt offerings are prescribed for each day. These offerings are not those mentioned in verses 3 and 5 that pertain to the Feast of the Tabernacles. The regulations concerning them are found in Numbers 29, verse 12 to 14. You can read it. All particulars there enjoined were now carefully observed, as may be concluded from the record here given of the celebration. Paid builders. During the festive assembly, discussions were held concerning the rebuilding of the temple, and contracts were closed with artisans able to carry out the plans that were laid. Many of us had been employed by Babylonians in building, as I mentioned before, in building their palaces, temples, and fortifications. We were skilled builders. So the Lord changed the curse into a blessing. The professional skill acquired in Babylon now proved to be a great asset. And I, Zerubabbel, set the masons and carpenters to work at their respective tasks, paying them regular wages in money. If you hire somebody, give them what they deserve. The purchase of cedars from the Lebanon mountains was made by contract with the Sidonians and the Tyrians, with compensation in kind. Phoenicia was a narrow strip of coastland and had to import foodstuffs. Solomon had paid for the materials received from Hiram of Tyre with wheat, barley, wine, and oil. And a similar arrangement was now made by me, Zerubabbel. We gave them foodstuff, and they gave us wood to build. No man is an island, no man stands alone. You know, we need one another. From the most ancient times, the Lebanon region had furnished cedar wood for building palaces, temples and other public buildings throughout the civilized countries of the Near East. The best wood is the cedar wood. Give the best you have when it comes to the cause of God. A special grant of Phoenician timber made by Cyrus seems to be intended, although outside of this remark we have no written evidence of such a grant. The provision made for the official decree, as later found in Ecbatana, to have the cost of the temple paid from royal funds apparently included the purchase of building material with public money. The food, drink, and oil must have been provided by the Persian administration, because we, the newly arrived Jews, could hardly have found enough foodstuffs even for our own needs in a half-deserted country to which they had come. You know, Cyrus was such a decent fellow. He made preparations for everything they needed. Next time, I received an offer from the Samaritans to assist me in the building of the temple. Come and listen to what happened. Father in heaven, thank you for the many lessons that we learn from the history of the Post-Exilic Jews. May we discover your love more and more. May we sing your grace forever and ever. Your love, your kindness, your goodness. Bless us in the series. In Jesus' name, amen.